This is Global Tel Link. You have a prepaid call from
Jesse Nava.
an inmate at the Centinela State Prison, Centinela, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hello, Jesse.
Hey. Yep.
Okay, thank you for calling me back. So, on the last time we spoke, you had just been sentenced to prison, and you had
Yeah.
got to reception, and I believe this was your first removal that you did while in prison.
Yeah.
Okay,
And Delano.
all right, and I'll go ahead and hand it off to you, and then you could continue from where we left off.
O- Okay, so basically, like I said, I had done the removal. Um, Ended up going to AdSeg, and as a back in for simple batteries, on inmates, you ended up getting a shoe, and because of the shoe, you are automatically made eligible for a 180. But because I had life without, I was going to 180 anyways. That was kind of why I had volunteered myself, because I was getting endorsed, or I was endorsed actually, to go to High Desert, and I was trying to avoid the bus going all the way up to High Desert. So I mean, so ultimately I ended up leaving. When I got kicked out, I got sent over to A Yard right there in Delano. From A Yard, I ended up staying there for a few months, and I ended up taking off to Tehachapi to the 180. And at the time, they had just assaulted a sergeant right there, and so the whole program was slammed down. They were tearing the whole yard apart, and then they end up closing the yard. They end up closing it and turning it over to SNY. So they were sending everybody out from there, and just by pure luck. Hold on real quick. You got it? Uh, yeah, just by pure luck, they somebody came to my door, spent time. They just by pure luck, I end up getting lucky and coming down, because they end up sending you go to whatever level 4 is available when they're closing down a yard. Whatever level 4 is available, they end up sending you to wherever you can. And fortunately for me, I actually ended up getting sent down here to Centinela to a 270, and I ended up getting right here to Centinela. Of course, I got here and got established. And mind you, when I spent all those years in the county jail, I ended up getting hooked up with a couple prison gang members while I was there. So when I came up to prison, I had an objective. My objective was ultimately to get to a yard and help take over the yard and get mixed up in the politic aspect of prison life, because to me, I felt that's where I felt validated at, like that's where I felt important. It gave me a sense of control, and it gave me a purpose. If I was coming to prison with life without the possibility of parole, what better way to continue living my destructive lifestyle than getting involved with a prison gang and ultimately getting wrapped up in politics. So I ended up coming down here to Centinela, and I was here for a few months on C Yard right here on the 270, and I ended up getting the yard, or I ended up making. At the time, they established a 5-man mess house, so I ended up getting on the mess house with a few other guys, and began doing my thing right here, basically, trafficking in drugs and doing all the bullshit that people do in here, to kind of promote and benefit the prison gang as well as myself in the process. And yeah, I mean I stayed here till about August of 2009, and I ended up getting into a little power struggle with some guys right there on the yard, and I ended up getting stabbed actually in the yard. And well, not in the yard, actually in my cell. They sent a couple guys from Florence in there, and I ended up getting stabbed and ended up going to the hole actually. And while I was back there in the hole, I ended up getting validated. And so, fortunately for me, they sent me from there. They sent me to Tehachapi Shoe, and then I ended up taking off out to court. So I ended up going back down to the county again, and I ended up staying down there in the county for another 5 years. I'm not sure what else.
So
As far as huh? What?
So when you got stabbed, was it to try to kill you, or just to try to, or just check you?
Well, so the thing was, I was actually supposed to be going out to court. My appeal had gotten granted. I was supposed to be going out to court, and there was like a little power struggle between areas, and the other guys that were there on the yard, they didn't know who I was going to leave my seat to on the yard. They were under the impression that I was going to leave it to somebody from IE, and I actually had somebody from East LA that I was going to leave it to. It was somebody that I didn't really mess with on the yard, but as far as his character and his demeanor, his gangster, I respected it. I just didn't mess with him personally. You know what I mean? Like, we had two different get downs, but he had the yard in Calipat for a while and never got himself in trouble. He wasn't a dope fiend. He knew how to hustle. And the way I seen it was like, okay, this is somebody that I'm going to leave to represent the individual that I was doing my thing for. So I had asked him prior to leaving, hey, check it out, I'm going to be taking off, in the next few months. What's up? You want to pick up my seat? And he was kind of like tripping out because, like I said, me and him, we had a little bit of conflict before over a little cell phone deal, And so he kind of got a little uppity, like he kind of thought his shit didn't stink, So it was just a little falling out. We worked it out and everything was cool, but we kind of stayed away from each other a little bit. But like I said, for me, it wasn't about, it wasn't personal. I was looking for the best person I thought to represent the man whose responsibilities I was in charge of, So I asked him, and he was like, man, he was a little caught off guard by it. He was like, hey, I'm kind of surprised. Like, why are you asking me, And I just told him, like, that I see your get down, and as far as, I'm comfortable with leaving you right here. And he was like, well, look, don't say anything to anybody until you got my driver's license in your hand, and you're ready to step back, and then I'll step forward, And I was like, all right, don't trip. So of course I put the wheels in motion, and I ended up getting him his driver's license. But the guys that were on the yard with me, like I said, it was more about because I had control of 1, 2, 3 buildings in the gym at the time, and I wasn't relinquishing control over those buildings. And I told the other guys, if somebody wants to move in there, the other meseros was like, look, if one of you guys want to move in there, go ahead, like then you could take over the building. But as long as nobody's in there, that building is still under my control. I'm gonna put who the person in play that whoever I put there, as long as none of you guys, as long as there's not a mesero in there, nothing's gonna be changed, So like say when you're in a prison down south, it's a lot of conflict, you know what I mean? Because everybody there's a bunch of chiefs and no Indians and basically, a lot of these dudes, their only means of income and their only means of getting high was through politics or a position of authority, you know what I mean? Like and so with me it was different. I've always been a hustler. I've always had, I've always had a source of income, stuff like that. So it's like
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
these guys, knowing that I was taking off, they thought that I was going to leave it to somebody else from my area or something. And in an effort to try to give the appearance that there would be a vacancy in that seat and putting somebody else in position there, they tried to move on me and get me off the yard before I left, but they didn't know that I already had somebody on standby. I just wasn't ready to actually completely step back yet. And that was basically what old boy was like, look, when you're ready to step back completely, let me know and I'll move forward how I deem necessary. And like I said, I already have his driver's license in my hand. He actually had it, but I wasn't ready to step back yet. I told him, look, when I know for sure what's going on with my court, when I'm leaving, I'll fall back, But ultimately, they end up moving. They end up sending a couple shooters to my cell, and like I said, we end up getting loose in the cell. I ended up waking up in the hospital, and that was that. So I ultimately I ended up getting my runbacks because they went about it all wrong. They kind of just jumped the gun, and I was under the impression. I was still a little naive about what could and couldn't be done, with regards to and how things work, because as far as I was concerned, everything I was doing was legit. So it's like, okay, you can't take that. And I was the only one that actually had a direct contact with any of them dudes. The rest of the cats that I was on the mess out with had a 3-way connect with somebody, and I was actually dealing with a couple of them guys straight, So it kind of so basically when I got to the back, and one of the guys showed up back there. He's the only one that I had any concern about because he was actually dealing with somebody that dealt with some of them dudes straight. So when he was denying it, he's like, nah, this, that, and the other thing. They let me know that they had taken it upon themselves to move forward with this. So I ended up talking to one of them boys that were on the streets at the time, and basically told him, like, look, man, this is what it is, and he's like, don't trip. So ultimately, they end up dropping the whole mess out that was there at that time and reestablishing everything. But while I was back there, I ended up getting validated. So yeah, that was pretty much that.
And when you got stabbed, how bad was the stabbing?
I mean, it was I mean, it's a prison stabbing. It could have been a lot worse. It wasn't the dudes that did it. Actually, truth be told, they actually brought the kite to me. They actually brought it and I actually read it to the senor on the streets at the time on the phone, and I told them to go in the cell next door, because and they were basically like, man, I don't want to. We know this is wrong. Like, what do we do? And I told them it's business. You guys are just being told what to do. It's got nothing to do with you guys. And and so ultimately I had to get the gabacho to get my door open because I was in the cell. And so one of the dudes lived in my building and the other one was his homeboy from his barrio, and he was in another building. So I just told him to go in the cell next door and basically got my door popped and when they were, because they back on the level, on the 270 level 4 right here, they used to put your lunches on the tray slot. And so I had the porter get my door popped so I can get my lunches, and I just left the door open and told him to come in there. And so, like I said, it could have been a lot worse. You know what I mean? Like their heart wasn't in it. They were basically just doing it to clean up some mess they were in, and in the end, they even came and basically were like, hey, fool, like, what do we do? Like, this is, read this wheel line. This is, we're supposed to take this to the back. Like, what's up? And so, and they're kind of, like I said, they were kind of worried about it because they didn't want to get in trouble. And I told them, hey, man, it's got nothing, it's not going to fall back on you guys. You know what I mean? You guys are just doing what Sureños are supposed to do. If they ask you to do something, you guys are doing it, and so don't trip. I'll take it up with, with them, with these cats, and we'll figure it out when I get my day in court. So it wasn't bad. It was a prison pegada. It wasn't, it wasn't like to try to kill me.
All
It was
right.
basically to get me off the yard, to give the impression that there was a vacancy. So if they didn't know that I had somebody already designated to grab my seat. So if I'm gone and there's nobody there to step forward, they can put whoever they want on that seat. And because there was nobody there working for the brother that I was working for, and by their, in their mind, they didn't know that there was anybody else there that was blessed by the brother whose seat I had. So they figured, okay, you give him 30 days, and if he doesn't put somebody there, then they can move forward with whoever they deem necessary to put in that seat, so they could put somebody else there to work for a different brother.
So you wake up in the hospital, and what's your thought process? What are you thinking about?
I was just kind of like, man, you know what I mean? Like I said, for me, at the time, I was kind of like, okay, well,
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
because there was a lot of little chicken shit conflicts that led up to that happening. Like there was a bunch of little things going on. We had been bumping heads, different little situations. Like, and I pretty much had felt the footsteps. I had heard them, prior to that, but I was like, the reality was my business was legit, and it was politics. I was like, my thought process was like, okay, the dude who I told you, the vato I ran to in the hole when I got there from the hospital, he's the only one that I was like, well, if anybody got this approved, because the rest of them cats were dealing with a three-way party. So when you're dealing with three-way parties, you don't get to do nothing of your own volition. You gotta wait, you gotta get it, somebody wait back, and it's a whole bunch of shit. So the other cat, he was dealing with some hyena who actually was dealing with like 5 of them boys, from the prison gang, and so she kind of had the authority to say yes or no on something. So I was under the impression like, okay, old boy must have got this okay, you know what I mean? Like, and so they, but when I ran into him, when I got there from CTC
You have 60 seconds remaining.
to the ad seg to A5, and he just happened to be there already. He was already in ad seg. They had snatched him up off the yard. He, right away, he was like, hey, nah, woo this, that, and and he's one of them dudes, like, he's gonna stand behind his shit because he was pretty much a stand-up dude, you know what I mean? Like, he played by the rules, you know what I mean? So if the fact that he was denying it, it let me know that this shit wasn't legit. Because if there was anybody on that mess that could have got that approved legitly, it was him.
Yeah.
So So my thing was like, damn. My initial thought was, okay, something happened. You know, like I must have fucked up along the way. Like they must, they must have got it okayed. But when I got there and it wasn't okayed, that's when I was like, well, fuck these dudes. You know what I mean? I'm gonna find a way to put a twist on these cats.